Hello, my friends. Football Manager 26 is coming, and as much as we all love the series, there are some things we all know that need fixing. I've pulled together 26 items that I think Sports Interactive needs to address. I'll break them up into 6 main categories during the match: new things, player data and interactions, quality of life, which is going to be rather long, scouting, and transfers. Some of these might surprise you, and some might annoy you. Maybe you agree with all of them, so let's get right to it. Starting with during a match, let's talk about injuries. How many times have you been playing FM and you look at the players along the bottom and you go, oh, one of my players that we just started the match is not on green heart, he's on red physical condition. What's up with that? You get no notification of this. So you click on tactics, you probably pause the game first, and you notice the little orange box next to the player's name, and it says, is recovering from a knock and thinks should be able to shake it off, or is hampered by injury. At many of our clubs, we are hiring staffs of 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 physios and sports scientists. You get no notification that a player has got a somewhat potentially serious injury on the pitch. You have to notice. So one, I think you should be notified. And two, imagine a player goes down in a game and your physios run out with their little cooler and the magic spray, and they've got a little radio in their ear, and they go, we think you should be able to shake it off. And you're like, shake what off? Is it a groin pull? Is it sprained ankle ligaments? Like, what is the thing that we're shaking off? Is it an upper body injury and he's just kind of sore, maybe like has some sore ribs? Because I've had it multiple times where you get to the end of the game, you nurse them through the match based off the physio's recommendation, and they're out for 3 weeks with sprained ankle ligaments. It's like, that would have been good to know in the match. It's unrealistic that your physios run out and they go, should be able to shake it off. And you're like, shake what off? And they're like, shrug. What? Also during the match, tactically, and I think this is a much larger issue with how the AI manager does all things in the game, but in the matches, if you're playing a team that, let's say they're relatively close to your level, it's a close game, it's a 1-0 or a 2-1 game or something like that. I've had it more times than I can remember that, let's say in the maybe last 10 minutes of the match, 85th minute, something like that, a team that's playing a 4-2-3-1 who is behind, who have a reasonable chance of scoring based on how the game is going, will drop into a defensive shell. They'll go back to a 4-4-2, or they'll go to a 3-4-2-1, or something where they're taking off an attacking player and bringing on a defender. And you just go like, wait a minute, you're down. They should be pushing on, trying to score, rather than going, well, it's really late in the game, so we'll just take the 1-0 loss. I understand. If it's like a 5-0 thrashing, by all means, that makes complete sense. Let's sub on some squad players and like just let it be. But when you've got a close match, especially against a rival, why are they dropping into a shell? That doesn't make any sense. During your halftime team talks, a lot of the choices currently that you get are, we're currently dominating possession, or we've had a lot of shots on target, I like what we're doing, we're being creative, we're creating a lot of chances, those types of things. The only problem is, you've got all the screen real estate and none of the data. Maybe it's just me where I go, ooh, I gotta go back, and I click back to go back to like the pre-locker room screen where it's got the match stats on the left, or maybe it's on this side of your screen, it's on the left. And you go, oh yeah, we're at 70% possession, so I feel comfortable using that recommendation for my assistant manager. But when you go to the locker room, you've got the players all fancily around like your head like this, right? And your box in the middle. I think there's a better way to structure this to where you could have the players, you've got them listed on the tactics screen in one giant list, like do that and use the right side of the screen for the team talk with the key points of data. Like, before I confirm what I'm going to say, give me we're at 70% possession, we have created 3.7 XG, we've had 14 shots on target, something where I go, oh yeah, that makes the most sense to use, rather than having to go back to a different screen to then influence my squad. I don't know, I just think that's one thing where it would be easier to use the screen real estate and put everything you need to run your team talk on one screen. Let's transition to talking about new things in the game. Now, some of this is going to be new things that SI have announced, and I'm going to just talk about that. But the first thing I think it would be absolutely epic, is a director of football mode. Now, I understand this is called Football Manager, not Football Director. But I think SI knows that there are many hardcore players of the game that do a director of football mode and would utilize that. And really, when you think about it, Football Manager, there are things you are doing as a football manager that you probably wouldn't actually be doing as a manager in a club. So you're already kind of in quasi director mode in some instances, in my opinion. So creating a separate game mode to where you hire and fire the staff, including the manager, or maybe you just hire the manager and they hire their own staff. You do, recruitment, you bring in players, you help build the squad in some sort of aligned vision with the manager, but then you just watch the tactics play out. I think it would provide a lot of creative ways for content creators and players to kind of explore, what does it look like? Can we build a dynasty over 20 years? Because I think SI probably has the data that some people, very small percentage of people play the game 20 years into the future, but a lot it's like you're only going to play a couple seasons, then you're going to move or something like that. So having the ability to be, I'm going to build a dynasty, but I don't need to be in the nitty gritty details. But again, I think this would require the AI manager to perform a lot better across all tasks. Next up, one of the things near and dear to my heart is international management. They announced that they were taking it out in FM25. Previous versions of international management were garbage. It's essentially Football Manager Club with key chunks ripped out, and you essentially get some very basic scouting and you call some players up. But even the camps, I think the camps is a big opportunity in international management to make it more immersive. You call certain players in. Sometimes it's their first call-up. Give me training ratings in the camps leading up to big games. So in the US, you're leading up to the Gold Cup and I'm bringing in some of those guys. How do they perform in training? If they didn't train well, I'm probably not going to use them. I'm not going to start them. Or did they look nervous because it's their first cap? Can I do something? Can I interact with them to do something about that? Versus it just being we've stripped the game down to its basics and just you set a tactic and it's these countries playing against each other. It's just not very dynamic. So if they're going to bring it back, it's got to be absolutely epic and not just a stripped down version of the club game. Likewise, and this is going to be short, the women's game has to be epic. It has to be absolutely epic. You'd think that should be pretty easy if the game is epic because you're just changing the genders in the teams. But there is going to be a small, but I think vocal minority of that's so woke when women's football is entertaining and interesting in a different way. So if they're going to roll it out, it has got to blow our socks off and not just be like, oh, okay, that was fine. They can't do fine with this release. Now, you may have heard other content creators do videos about this, but there was a leak about the positions changing names in FM26. So as an example, I've got this pulled up on my screen. You've got goalkeeper, line holding keeper, no nonsense goalkeeper, sweeper keeper, and ball playing goalkeeper. So 2 of those obviously are new. However, when you go through these lists, I'm a little nervous that it is just essentially taking goalkeeper and sweeper keeper and removing attack, support, defend, and just renaming them. Because there's other positions that are similar to that, to where it is more specific. So in some ways that could make building a specific tactic more interesting. But if it's just, we're going to slap a new label on a thing and change how you get to it. So instead of sweeper keeper on defend, you're going to have no nonsense goalkeeper, or line holding keeper is your sweeper keeper on support, or whatever. That's going to seem like it's a new shiny thing, but it's not actually new. So if they're going to roll this out, those tactics and those changes to the positions actually have to be meaningful. We'll see. Next, let's talk about player data and interactions. And this is one of my biggest burning pain points with FM. But the player history screen, look at this real estate. And I understand it has to work on various screen sizes, but for a desktop player, this is an enormous amount of screen real estate that is blank. And the number one thing I want on this screen, I don't care how many player of the match awards they got in a season. I want to see the number of minutes they played. It tells a completely different story of a player's season if you have not just the number of appearances as starts and subs, but how many minutes they played. Example, you've got a squad player or a breakthrough prospect that's coming through that you're scouting at another club. You want to be able to see, did they have 10 substitute appearances and score 4 goals, but those 10 appearances were 5 minutes each? Or were they 45 minutes each? That's a massive difference in terms of how you would view the player. This is something where you can go to Transfermarkt and look up the number of minutes played by any player pretty much in the world that you're going to care about, like on a daily basis. You would think, I know it's like scouting and whatever, but on the history screen, you should be able to see, if you can tell me the number of appearances that are starts and subs, you should be able to tell me the number of minutes, especially considering lots of data in FM now is like, XG per 90 or shots per whatever. Like it got a lot of per 90 stuff. So the data is there. You just can't see it on the history screen. In fact, I'd love if you could edit what is on the history screen, because there's gonna be stuff that you care about that I personally don't care about. We should be able to modify that screen and move those columns around. And yes, we're gonna talk about moving columns later on that screen to give you a view of what you want to see. You could even make it more specific to say, like, I have a screen for attackers. I have screens for goalkeepers on their history, right? I want to see more interesting stats on the history screen. It doesn't have to be the in-depth data analysis requiring an in-depth team within your club to pull it together. We're talking like basic stuff on that screen. Next, let's talk about contract negotiations with your players. I want to caveat this because this will apply to the transfers as well. I understand they need to have a limit in the game where eventually the AI gets annoyed and walks away or gets very frustrated with you. Because if it just went on forever, it would be exploitable by players to go like, oh, if I just keep doing this, then like I can eventually get them to agree to some ridiculous contract where they're making €3 a week and, whatever. But there are scenarios where it is, I think it errs on too aggressive, to where you've got a player who's been with your club since he was a wee lad, and he's been there 6 years. You've moved him up through. He's now a star player. He started out as a breakthrough prospect. You're on his favored personnel. You click one button wrong in the conversation, and all of a sudden they hate you and they walk out and everyone's mad. And it's like, I just don't think that's realistic. You could sit down with the players' representatives or with the squad and go, guys, the player's worth 100 million and they're offering us 400,000. This is ridiculous. Like, no, we're not going to sell you for that. I just think there should be more options and more flexibility in the contract negotiation. Again, understanding that that is balanced against, if it goes on too long, then it's very exploitable by the players. I just think it's a tad too aggressive right now. Speaking of things that need to be explained to teams, you know that screen that pops up before you get into a match, before you're in the locker room, and it shows like these players are confused about the team selection or think this person should have been included or whatever? If you're gonna punish me as a player by saying, hey, I don't understand why our star striker is sitting when this is our third game in 7 days and he's exhausted, you either need to give me an option to explain that to the squad before they go out, because it would be very evident. Imagine you putting yourselves into a locker room and it looks like, hey guys, like what's wrong? Like you guys are like grumbling. What's up? You'd have a conversation. Hey, why is our star player sitting? Well, he played, 100 minutes in the last 2 games and those were 4 days apart. So we're going to bring him on probably in the second half, maybe at the end, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that. Let me explain that to me if you're going to show me that they're upset. Otherwise, I think it's a ridiculous feature that they're upset, because I can't do anything about it as the player of the game. And at some point you would think squad rotation makes sense, which again, I think the AI managers are really poor at, especially internationally, where it's like, hey, they're starting the game already in the orange and they're all dead by the second half. That doesn't make any sense, but I think you see that on the club side too. Now let's talk about quality of life adjustments, and I have 11 things to go over, so buckle up. The first one is press conference questions. Again, I understand there are going to be some limitations here, and they're trying to make it as dynamic as possible. But if you play FM for a significant period of time, you know what the right answers are. You know what to say. You know what to avoid. There needs to be significant amounts of dynamic content if you're going to have press conferences. Now, if it's going to be, there's a certain way to answer, then I should be able to assign my assistant manager and have them not screw it up. But if I can't do that, then I think they've got to greatly improve the questions that you're getting, the data that's available to you during those questions. Like sometimes you get really specific questions about injuries that happen during the game. Like let's say it's after, and it's like, I literally haven't talked to my physios yet. So if you're going to ask me that, show me like the quick physio report on the screen so I could react to it. Something like that. In fact, I had in a save recently, I said, I haven't talked to the physios yet. And it's like, the public's going to want a proper answer from you. And I'm like, as a player, I'm going, what do you want me to do here? I have no idea how long he's going to be out because we haven't gone to the inbox yet where you show me. But kind of the same thing with the dynamics. You'll get a question about, well, how do you think so-and-so star striker is going to feel that you pulled him off when he's on a brace in the 75th minute? And it's like, I'm sorry, this is our third game in 7 days and his legs were falling off. I'm sure he'll be just fine because we have a Champions League game next week. If you're going to ask me a question like that, it has to make more sense. I think it would be a dream if there's some sort of conversational AI, but I think that's going to be entirely too resource intensive because again, we have to remember FM has to work across a multitude of platforms. So I don't think that's realistic to expect any AI anything like actual AI chatting capabilities, if you will. But I think the press conferences are pretty poor right now in terms of it should understand the context of what's going on or allow you to provide that context or just skip them entirely. Quick little nugget here, my friends. We're pretty far into the video. If you're still watching, thanks for doing that. If you'd hit the like button and subscribe. And also, I will be putting out a lot of FM26 content. If you want to support the channel financially, you can go to patreon.com/grayhairgaming. We're still about 1,800 hours away from being able to be monetized on YouTube, so that won't be a thing anytime soon, but thanks for watching. I'm not sure if this next one's going to be controversial, but you know those little gameplay tips that pop up like on the continuing screen? So like, let's say you're in the middle of a transfer window and it pops up and it's like, and it's grinding on the same day, and it's like popping up these little random pieces of data underneath the calendar. I think those tips are an indication from SI. They understand the game doesn't work entirely as it should. Let me give you an example. Let's say you get a scout report on a new player that's been scouted. You have some basic information, looks good, 4-star potential in a position of need that you've got like left or right back since there are none in this game. And you go, oh yeah, I want more information on that player. And you assign it to say your scouting pool rather than the scout that brought you the report. The whole scout priorities and assignments list, the reminder I got was essentially, hey, if you've got a scout that is going to change continents, that's going to mean a lot more travel and a lot less scouting, which makes sense. Why doesn't the game just figure that out? Why do I have to juggle whether my scout in Asia is the next one in the scouting pool that's now going to be asked to fly to Brazil when I've already got a scout that's in South America right now? The juggling of that, I would expect them to figure out. Or just make it the scout that just did the scouting. To say like, yes, give me more information from this scout who's currently still in the area. That makes more sense than like they're flying back and forth constantly. Now I know some people absolutely love the scouting system and go super deep on it. That's not how I play the game. I want my scouts to find players. I don't look at any Wonder Kid lists, but it's like those little tips to me overall indicate we should have probably put that into the game to make it easier to play, but instead we're going to give you random tips that you're probably never going to see because you're going to look at your phone or YouTube while you're sitting on the continuing screen. Like, how many times have you sat there and go, ooh, there's another amazing tip that's going to like change my world. I'm going to sit here and watch this screen as it just sits there on the calendar. That doesn't make any sense. Just make the game better. Now let's talk about something very basic. Columns. Now I know FM25, they had announced that we're moving to tiles and cards as part of this new, look and feel with the new engine. So maybe this will be redundant information. But in the year 2025, the inability to have columns that you can move, insert, remove, stretch, and shrink in logical ways without it breaking on, like, say, the squad screen is just simply unacceptable. We're talking basic fundamental spreadsheet things, which essentially is what this game has been for decades. And you can't allow me to move columns without it go and all of a sudden it like slides over. That either has to go away completely where there are no more columns, which I think would be controversial because people like to customize the look and feel exactly how they like it. So ideally, you just make it to where it works. I don't even care if you put grid lines to make your life easier. I don't know if that helps or not from a development standpoint, but like, I wouldn't mind if it looked like Excel or Google Sheets with actual lines, but it's like, you should be able to just easily do this with your columns. It's basic. It's 2025. Next up, graphics, which I do have a little bit of hope now that they've put out the trailer or the teaser, I guess, for FM26 and showing actual gameplay footage of players walking out. But essentially, no more 2D trees, no more burger vans that look like a giant football. Can you imagine the empire that the person who owns the burger vans has? They're in every stadium and everywhere in the world. Pretty impressive. At least the people that manufacture the vans, they're doing all right. But not just that. I think in 2025, it's not unreasonable to have mapped out every stadium and to have a quasi-realistic view of where that stadium is in the surrounding area. It doesn't have to be like highly detailed, super specific. Imagine, say, Everton's new stadium right on the river. That should be the view that you get. It shouldn't just be standard brick houses. It should be, this is roughly what it looks like. There's data available everywhere. You got Google Maps, Google Earth, you got all these things, all this mapping software to show this is what the general surrounding area looks like. You've got the other stadiums where like they're kind of open at the end because you can see the mountain range in the back. Not only should there not be 2D trees, but like it should look like this is, I recognize this place that this stadium is in. I don't think that's too much to ask. FM will remind you to add or remove certain topics from your social media feed that no one reads. I think what would really be a quality of life improvement is to remind you what leagues to add or delete to make the game process faster for you as a player. You've taken your Irish club to the Europa Conference League for the first time ever. Congratulations. By the way, player, you might want to load Bulgaria, Romania, and Slovenia, at least the top leagues, so that when you get into those competitions, you're not playing a team of gray players, so that's more realistic. And likewise, congratulations, you've made it to the Champions League, you're rocking and rolling. You know what, you could probably drop those third divisions throughout Europe so that the game processes faster for you while still leaving you with good players to scout and it being interesting, because again, the odds that once you're Liverpool and you're in the Champions League, you're probably not scouting the Romanian second division to find a player. Give me a reminder to remove that so my game processes faster. Maybe this is just me, but I tend to load a lot of leagues because I like finding those like random nuggets because I let my scouts do the scouting rather than using lists of wonder kids that I find online. But I think that would help players actually play the game more rather than it taking a longer time to process. And if you're going to remind me about the social media feed, why can't you remind me about that? Because that impacts my gameplay. Now, I did a video about this where I am a little concerned that experiments in FM26, at least to start, are going to be nerfed because it's a brand new match engine. Everything's brand new. And so to get realistic data, they want to make sure the bug reports that they're getting are clean. What if they said you can't have an editor to start? Or maybe the editor comes in the winter update or something like that. So I think quality of life, enabling editors, mods, skin packs, face packs, stuff like that would be critically important to having continuity with previous versions of FM. Personally, I'd be willing to give up face packs if the game came with realistic faces. I'd be willing to give up, some people like the different looks of logos. If you just gave me the logos, which I understand is a licensing issue, that's different. But I do worry as time goes on and more lawyers get involved and licenses happen and stuff like that, that the ability to make those changes may disappear. So a quality of life would be keeping them in place and letting us continue to have the editor so that somebody can come up with a 10-tier USA Pro Rel thing that I can play. Next quality of life thing is about your manager and quitting the job that you have. I did not know this was a thing until I discussed it in my Discord. The link is in the description. That if you're on, say, a journeyman save and you're like, I think I'm going to be done at the end of the season, you can resign at end of season, but it only pops up 6 months in advance. I had no idea that was a thing, and I've been playing since FM17. I think it should be more obvious in your negotiations with the club when they keep coming back to you. Give me, instead of like enter negotiations or accept or whatever, give me the tell them that I'm going to be resigning at the end of the season. Because again, realistically, in the football world, that's going to happen. And then they can have a different strategy. They can start recruiting a manager in advance. They might leave you out of some of the scouting stuff that happens like in the winter window because you're getting ready to leave, that type of thing, or building up to the summer window. There could be lots of changes from just making that more obvious. And then attached to that, it should not impact you as a manager that you leave a job or that you are in the running for several jobs at once. Welcome to unemployment. Wouldn't it make sense that a manager would take calls or have his or her agent take calls from various clubs? Oh, that looks interesting and that looks interesting. Let's see if they're interested. Let's go have a little side conversation. Just like you can have a conversation with a player's agent, why can't you have your agent have a conversation with those clubs? Oh, it's going to be 26 things because I just thought of something. I think the interview process for managers when you're looking for a job, either unemployed or employed, is rather broken. You don't get enough data to answer the specific questions they're asking you effectively enough. So if you're going to ask me, how much budget do you think you're going to need to change your staff? I don't know. Can you give me a report on that screen showing me the staff and like maybe what their ratings are in the key categories that like goalkeeping coaches have this, and this on those 3 goalkeeping attributes? Can you show me what the average wage at the club is for the starting 11? Can you show me what you've spent in the last 10 seasons on that screen? Don't make me go and like try and figure it out on the transfer history outside of the interview. The interview process is redundant, it's boring, it's not effective, and you just kind of go like, well, I think I'm supposed to say this, so I'm going to say this so that I have a chance that the game will elect to hire me. That's just silly. I'm going to pop into FM for this one. I think a lot of things in FM are based on reputation, which is in conflict with what the game presents to you as a player. Let me give you an example. I was given the choice to change my captain 6 months after joining a club. It's our first summer transfer window. That makes sense. Let's pick a captain coming up. Yay. It recommends that we keep Tommy Horvat. He's the current captain. And it recommends that Gurkhan Kartal is appointed as vice captain. None of this makes sense though, because if you sort by the attributes that FM is showing you as important, leadership and teamwork and age, I guess. Okay, Tommy Horvat is 30. He has 12 leadership and 14 teamwork. If I sort by leadership and teamwork, which is one of the critical elements, you have other options. Even Nicholas Maidson with a 13 and a 14 and a year younger is better than Tommy Horvat. But I've got players, now these are new players that I signed, have 17 and 14, 16 and 15. Help me understand why those players aren't recommended. Is it because Tommy Horvat has been at the club for a long time? If that matters, then you should give it to the player as critical information. Like you've got like the trained at club and trained in nation information. Tommy Horvat, age, leadership, teamwork, seasons at club, 6. Oh, maybe that would influence me as a player, that why that decision makes more sense. But then over here with the vice captain, Gurkhan Kartal, 15 and 11, 20 years old. You've got another 20-year-old who is, to be fair, new from the summer transfer window with a 17 and a 14. So it can't be an age thing. And Gurkhan now is a homegrown prospect. Does that mean that he is a vice captain automatically? If so, if it has to do with his tenure at the club, then tenure at the club should be listed. Because otherwise, there are other players with better attributes. And the attributes are what you're telling me are important. That doesn't make any sense. While we're here, we'll talk about regen faces. I think we all know, if you've played FM for a while, earlier versions of the game actually had better regen faces. They have, over time, kind of slowly degraded, which is just crazy. So I just want the regen faces to look realistic and to be varied enough, but not look like garbage. The last thing on our quality of life list is mentoring. I love the idea of mentoring. If I just click ask assistant to assign, I don't understand anything about why the assistant has set things up in that manner. So if you're going to have mentoring as part of the game, which I think it should be, then I think we need more information. Again, we have lots of screen real estate here to help explain what the impacts will be. For example, if I have Nicholas Maidson, driven personality, who's going to have an average estimated influence on the group, what is his influence potentially going to be? Is it going to be the other players are going to become more driven? Are they going to become more technical because he's older? I don't know based off of this screen. Now, again, I'm sure people figured this out and it's on FM blogs and whatever. I don't read those. As a player of the game, especially the type of player that I think SI is trying to target over time is to get more players in, what does this mean? Personally, it drives me insane when I have a high determination player who's like, say, 18, that I put into a mentoring group and their determination starts to drop. I don't know why their determination is dropping. Is it because I put them in a mentoring group with someone who's a 16? Maybe. But the game doesn't show you what the effect, again, estimated effect from the group. Significant for these players. In what way? Like, give me some data. Like, you can expect if you put one of your starting DMs and a starting center back in with a group of defenders, that they will get better at defending and they will take on a little bit more of the personality of that player. Even that type of information would be lovely. But if we just go and we click ask assistant to assign, one, you only get 3 groups of 3 players each. Is 3 the right size? Is it bad to have groups of 5, 6, 7? If so, why? And I don't understand. It looks like it's just, hey, let's throw our highly influential and team leader players into a group and see what happens. I don't get that. And this is recommended by the assistant manager. The signing has an estimated influence of the group of light and none of estimated effect from the group. So why did you recommend you put these players together? We have 2 of those. That doesn't make any sense. Next, let's talk about scouting. And the first thing that you've probably felt as well is that your scouts will bring you players that make double or triple the highest wage at your squad and would fully break the wage structure, and also you can't afford, they'll bring you players that the transfer fee is more than the entire bank balance of your team, or it's like 10 times your current transfer budget. Thanks for the information. That's not going to help. And I understand there are some situations where other clubs may get into financial difficulties and that ask will go down, perhaps. But if I've got a 3 million transfer budget and you bring me players that they're transfer listed at 30 to 40 million, I'm not going to pay attention to that, because why would I? What are the odds that a club is asking for 30 million euros and they're going to take my 3 million, or my 3 million and add-ons for the next 7,000 years to pay for it? It just doesn't make any sense. I've also experienced if a scout retires or you fire them and replace them with somebody else, you lose some scouting data. Maybe that's just me, maybe my game is broken, but I specifically had a thing when I was in South Korea and Japan where I had a scout leave, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can't see all the information we had on that player. Surely they have a database that they are inputting their notes into, and it's not like they have a notepad with paper notes and they're just lighting them on fire as they go out of the club because you didn't renew their contract. That doesn't make any sense. Lastly, and I think this ties into the transfer values, which we're about to get to. If a player requests to leave or somebody comes in for them, don't just tell me that people are sniffing around. Give me like, hey, based on who we've scouted, these are the top 5 potential replacements. What do you think? Because at least really well-run clubs, think about like a Brighton or somebody like that, have a system where they go, if this player leaves, we have these options. And I understand there's the squad planner, but I'm talking about somebody comes in on like deadline day and goes, we're going to offer you a lot of money for that one player. Well, don't make me then have to go figure out on a separate screen. Let me go through all my scout reports. Let me go to my short list. Let me whatever. Make it easy to say, I think this would happen at a club. They would say, if we do this, we think it's realistic at this current time that we could pick up these players. And these are top 5 choices. Here's why. Just like a little thing. But you don't get that. It's just good luck. You have to go figure that out yourself, which I think from a playability standpoint is damaging. Next, we're moving into transfers. Transfers, transfer valuations, the transfer ranges, all of it is broken and nonsensical. I can understand there needs to be a range, and there is not that much difference between a 5,000 euro player and a 15,000 euro player. But moving into my experiment series, which if you haven't seen, you can check the link up here. You've got players 121 to 364 million. These things are not the same. They're not even remotely close to being the same. The second player, 32 million to 96 million. Explain to me how that is the same value of player. 32 to 50 million maybe would be realistic. 121 to 364 million, I understand, is just a 3x of 121 times 3 is 364. In what world is a player worth 121 million the same player that's worth 364 million? That is nonsensical. So I know people have talked about this ad nauseum, so I probably shouldn't spend much time on it, but the whole transfer value system is insane to me. It should be more dynamic. It should change based off of what's going on. If it's deadline day, if they just lost a key player and everybody knows they just lost a key player because they had a release clause activated, suddenly that price is going to go up. To have it just be like, we'll just add a 3x of the low value, it just is wild to me. And lastly, with transfers, it kind of goes along with the contract negotiations with players. The transfer negotiations with teams is very broken. There have been people that have figured out if I do this a certain number of times, I can wear them down. There's also the flip side where it's like you say one thing, you suggest one thing, and they just walk away and like they don't want to consider it ever again, or at least for like the next month or whatever the time period is. I just don't think that's very realistic. It's like, hey, I just added a 5% sell-on clause or something like that, and that's what's going to break the deal. I don't think that's realistic. So I can understand, again, from a coding standpoint, why you want to have a certain number of chances to negotiate, because otherwise players would just do it and figure out what the correct steps were to get their transfers to go through. And that's also broken. But I think there has to be some sort of middle ground to where if I am not significantly changing the structure of the deal, that if I do one more suggestion, it doesn't break the negotiation. I just don't think that's realistic, because then you've got the player going like, I thought we were doing a deal. We already agreed personal terms. I actually think the personal terms should come first. Now, I know they have the discuss with the agent first, so maybe that's part of it. But you see that all the time in the news now where They've already talked about personal terms, and now it's just up to the clubs to figure it out. Why do we do that in reverse in FM? All right, my friends, that's my list of things. I hope you've enjoyed that. I'd love to hear from you in the comments which ones you agree with, which ones you disagree with, and what have I missed? What really annoys you in Football Manager that you're really hoping to see a fix for in FM26? Make sure you're subscribed. If you're not, hit the like button, and we'll see you next time.